So I guess we'll just wait for Sean Trout to be here. He dropped off the plan, so the plans you see is for concept plan to redevelop that property at 1030 Wilmington Pike into the Fence Works office and business. Oh, I see Jack. Mhm. If you're gonna start with a parking lot, we went out. No, it's right here where Meat Market is and Abbey Green. It's behind the billboard. Yeah, you can see it from Stockwell. Well, you can see Abbey Green from Stockwell. It's behind there, yep. Oh, Jack and Rob is here if you would like to start with the pipeline instead.
Sure. Ready to go?
Yep.
Sure. Good evening, welcome to West Township Board of Supervisors Workshop on Monday, June 1st, 2026. First up tonight is a discussion on potential pipeline related ordinances. We have another list of our planning commission here tonight. Good evening.
Microphone? There you go.
We asked Miller to make some time in the workshop available because as we're working through some of these issues that relate to a pipeline ordinance, we thought that there were some points that we would certainly appreciate or welcome any input or advice you had on certain matters. And so I'll go through some of the major items, and please, if you have your own issues or questions, please feel free to raise them. I think you're all probably aware that Pennsylvania municipalities can't regulate certain aspects of pipeline construction. For instance, we can't control where the roots go. That's left up to the federal government, or it's up to Pennsylvania PUC, the Utility Commission. And we can't regulate certain other aspects of pipeline construction. We can't regulate the materials that are used in pipelines. We can't regulate operational issues. We really can't regulate safety issues. So we're municipalities are preempted. However, we can regulate certain aspects that relate to land use issues. And so we can set setbacks, we can prescribe certain surface land uses, we can prescribe building heights, we can specify in what some districts certain surface uses must go in. And we can regulate area of bulk, we can prescribe screening provisions for land use adjacent to pipelines. So there is a pretty important role for townships to play. So for instance, this would affect where compressor station would be located. Compressor stations are very loud. They're usually run by diesel engines. They run 24/7. They're very noisy. Some people believe that they had to live nearby. There are metering stations, there are valve stations. Those are all on the surface, and the township can largely regulate where they're supposed to go. So you see in your materials that the staff, Mr. Miller, has compiled some very helpful resources for the PC. And one is a map showing where the pipeline corridors are in this township. We also have a spreadsheet that shows how many properties might be affected by various setback distances. I think it was 100 yards.
Yeah,
200.
100 feet, so the closest that we can do.
300. Um, and we've also given you a kind of a working draft of an ordinance, and I'm gonna give you a caution there, and that is, this is a working document. Really not set on any of the provisions. Some of the issues or items that you see in the ordinance are placeholders. Because there's really no consensus yet on the planning commission about whether or not we should be regulating in this area. If so, how we do it.
So what is the general, just from the planning commission, where do they line up on us? You have a split, you have general consensus?
Well, I don't want to speak for all of the members at this point, but I would say there are real concerns about creating setbacks from existing pipelines, which we have the authority to do. And the spreadsheet that Ella has prepared is very interesting. Thank you, this looks like they have. And it shows you how many properties would be affected by different setbacks from the various pipelines. So you can see that in 100-foot radius of these various pipelines, in the aggregate, there's 236 parcels that are affected. Now, that's really basic proximity. We don't know what's on those parcels. And we don't know what uses are underway. But we do know that if we establish some of the setbacks that are recommended by Chester County, you see your materials, Chester County has has produced a model solid ordinance. That's another one of the issues. Regulate this in zoning, or do you want to regulate this in solid is about how those can be challenged and what provisions can be waived, and a lot of that's found in the PC. That's how it's going. But for instance, if we were to set a setback of, let's say, 100 feet, and that's an arbitrary number now. Chester County recommends setbacks of way more than 100 feet. But one of the concerns of the planning commission is, what would this do to existing structures or uses? So if you had a detached accessory dwelling unit, or if you had a shed or a swimming pool pavilion, and it was in the zone, it would immediately become a pre-existing non-conforming use. So that raises a whole raft of issues. If we were to do that, and you wanted, a landowner wanted to build an accessory dwelling unit or a pool or some sort of pool structure, they'd have to get a variance. So that means you go to the zoning hearing board, go through the expense and the trouble of preparing the application and proving your entitlement. And as you're probably aware, the standards for proving a variance are technically very difficult in Pennsylvania. It's a solid provision, the Board of Supervisors can waive some of those provisions. But there are other ways that you can attack or challenge a solid provision. It's all, as I said, it's all found in the MPC. So I think that the planning commission is feeling pretty comfortable, and I'm sort of right out of the limb here. I think we're pretty comfortable in setting some setbacks from new pipelines. Okay, these would be pipelines that haven't been constructed yet. The example I'll give is if we had the type of setbacks that are set forth in the Chester County model ordinance, it's not clear to me that Mariner 2 could have been constructed because it's too close to the church versus the intersection of 3-2. But I'm not sure that that's been tested, and I'm leery about offering legal opinion because I'm not the township's lawyer. But that's just an example of how a setback from new pipeline construction might affect you. It might be, if you set those and they were legal, it might be possible to create a new pipeline in an existing corridor in West Township, given what's there now. So that's a big issue. But I have to say that the central issue for the planning commission was, should we regulate in a way that makes existing uses or structures really beautiful. That would represent, I think, a serious impingement on property rights. But as I said before, zoning in some sense is a balance of safety and property rights. What can we do? What should we do? And how does it affect our residents? So you can see from the draft ordinance that we're also considering different setbacks from pipelines that carry different materials. Obviously, some pipelines carry more hazardous materials than others. So that's another issue. But if you have any thoughts about some of these issues that the planning commission has identified, I think it would be helpful, because I'll report back to the planning commission and we'll try to coordinate what we're doing. Mr. Pagar has anything to add? You certainly can do so.
Good evening, Rob Pagar, planning commission. And I know we discussed this with you before at the spectrum. The fact that West Town is largely developed, and the quandary is one extreme is West Town, which is largely developed, and one extreme is non-developed municipality where it's basically a blank canvas where someone went through a pipeline. You can regulate that fairly consistently, that you're not impacting other properties, and as Jack indicated, we have this quandary with existing properties and what to do about them if someone wants to put in a shed or a swimming pool or accessory dwelling unit or whatever. Then they have to go for variance if it's zoning. If it's not zoning, it's subdivision and land development. I don't think we're gonna ask them to do a land development, but they'd have to, they just come before the board to get a waiver, which would be unusual. And I don't know that the board wants to deal with something like that. So that's therein lies one of the issues that, how do we address this, because there are so many parcels that are already there, that these pipelines have coexisted with them for decades, if not more. And I have a plan, I know it may be hard to see there, but these heavy blue lines basically show the 4 or 5 main pipelines, and you see how many existing properties there. They run, the pipelines run through the backyards, or through the property, or down the road adjacent to the property. And, we don't want, I don't think the board wants to penalize that, because now we have this ordinance. So, I guess we were curious what your thoughts were on this issue with existing city properties.
One other thing that I can point out is in 2016, this is all in connection with the construction of Mariner 2 pipeline. The board did issue a resolution, none of you at the time, but one of the resolutions was stated as follows. The board has deep concerns for the high level of risk from pipelines due to the natural, by the way, you were not your manager. Yes, well, it's a reported abuse. Due to the nature of the highly volatile liquids transported through the township, this risk must be demonstrably mitigated by such measures as the development of an response plan, including viable worst case evacuation routes, enhanced safety equipment, safety training for first responders, and separation of new NGLs, national plans, from existing residences by a distance equal to or greater than the potential impact radius. So at least you were on record then the township as a corporate body was on record then as expressing concern about safety issues related to these pipelines. And there are real risks, but it's hard, I think, to quantify them. Chester County has done some of that work. The American pipeline, so that study, that risk assessment is there.
Well, I have to, when this first came up, I asked the obvious question, why are we doing this now? I mean, that's really closing the door after the worst has happened. This is, there is highly likely that any of the segments will be constructed in West Kent, whether it's a hydrogen pipeline or a carbon dioxide pipeline as you're covering in your ordinance. So I'm just wondering why you're taking that route. And also I have to seriously wonder why we are not asking residents who would be affected by this ordinance, the 230 to 100-foot setback. They would probably have something to say about their property rights being extremely limited. So I'm just kind of arbitrarily coming up with an ordinance I think is really a little going beyond what we should ask the planning commission to take on.
Yeah, well, we're doing this because the board asks. So whether or not it's a good idea or not, is something that you'll have to reckon. If we complete our work, I mean, if you change your mind and you're not too interested in it, then well, you know, perhaps you will.
Well, I think we have different levels of interest with different people here.
Yeah, well, usually public comment is handled maybe the post. You don't usually do public comment while we're in the midst of development. We did that to some extent. So usually the planning commission does something or some a group of township or a supervisor deals with it, it advertises it, hearing that's when public comment is received routinely. That's what we do that way, and that's the way it is.
I see you've also done a bit of a survey that other townships are doing. It seems to be a little spotty, but very few townships are going and are close to what you're proposing, so.
But I'm sorry to interrupt, we're not proposing anything yet, we're.
Well, why are you doing it? You must be getting ready to propose something, otherwise you wouldn't be wasting your time.
You're working on it, but we got at a point, it might be helpful to get your input. If you're not ready to give input or you don't think it's a worthy task, then we'll perhaps reconsider.
Yeah, if you remember, this really came on the heels of Stone property and the frustration with not having ordinance in place. At that time, and it's been approved, preliminary approval apparently is null and void because they go back in time, so let's start over again. But I think they're kind of grandfathered anyway, but I'm not an attorney, so I don't really know how that would apply, but it's kind of too late. Would have been nice to have it.
Yeah.
But there are only a handful of properties remaining that this could have, that it would ideally apply to have these setbacks. That are not the West Town Schools one, that's almost a square mile, and the park plant goes right down, I guess it's West Town Road. Other ones like I think of are Winterfront, and there's a couple of small properties, one on 926.
Is there a way to correct the ordinance where it's probably throw it to you about asking questions? Because this kind of came out of my comments, by the way, from hearing 40 residents that showed up and articulated very clearly and coherently the risks, including from our emergency services coordinator, the risks that are posed. They want to put houses up 10 feet from a pipeline that's 18 inches in the ground, it was built in 1930, but that to me sounds like pretty high risk. People are willing to do it, they're willing to buy the property, but then the township is willing, because it's left all in the bag. If we've got a catastrophic incident, but in the way they designed it too, you couldn't get vehicles in and out of there efficiently, emergency vehicles. So there was a lot of concern there. Question is, could you, and I get, like, I'm not proposing or would propose or suggest that we layer on these crazy, requirements for pre-existing homeowners. And it's mostly built out, I get that too. What I'm trying to control for is, let's say Stokes doesn't go through. And then you'll say, we pass an ordinance and somebody else comes in and wants to put up 78, 85 homes there. We still don't have an ordinance. And it goes through and then we don't control the safety issue. So that was kind of that, and if there is a way this would make it prospective, it doesn't have to be retroactive or apply to everybody from the state. And the utility maybe not that high, but at least the township's finally acting on what it talked about in, what was it, 2016? Whatever it was. But anyway, those are my thoughts on the short timer here, but that's where it came from. That's where the thought process came from.
Yeah, it was certainly, an ordinance could be crafted that is prospective. Relates to new development. Does not attempt to regulate, certain uses certain residential, uses that are, that are common. That's certainly the case, but, the enterprise pipeline or Buckeye, the owners or operators of the pipeline that go through the perspective of, proposed state, they could, propose a new pipeline. I mean, those pipelines are pretty old, 80 years old. They might say, well, let's put a new pipeline in there. If we had an ordinance that had much greater setbacks, they would be in a more restrictive position.
So
Just, I just wanna add, very quick before I forget, the way that our ordinance is written now, it also does not address the issue of repairs or replacement of pipelines. So if pipeline company wants to go and remove whatever they have within the corridor, and they would like to install a new pipeline with other product being moved, we don't have any provision that allows us to request an emergency response plan, an access. So that was, I think that was another item was for discussion, that it's not just for land, it's not just for residential, non-residential properties, but it's also for whatever else it is to come in the future when it comes to pipelines.
quick question on that is, so we wouldn't want the pipeline to not put in a new pipeline company not put in a new pipeline because they would be subject to new restrictions, I think, right? Question is, are they in control of whether or not to put a new pipeline in, or are there federal regulations that require them to replace the pipelines at a certain time, running to?
Not aware of a replacement scheme, but they do have a lot of safety requirements and inspection requirements. They have to fly over the route, they have to run devices through the pipeline. They have to have leak protection, and there's all kinds of stuff that they must do.
Do you think it's a net negative, Jack, if we incorporated kind of, you was talking about, and you were suggesting, which is if they're gonna tear up pipelines that are existing, and put a new one in. Is it a net negative then to layer on restrictions that? We stop and do it,
Speaking for myself, it's not a planning commission, but I would be in favor of imposing restrictions on new pipelines. Because I'm concerned about the risk, and so was this award back 10 years ago.
What is a new pipeline? And
Well, it's a good question. Is it a repair? Is it a complete replacement? Is it married with Energy Transfer Partners did?
you may have seen several months ago, the governor came out with a plan that we have all these old pipelines all over the place in Pennsylvania, we have to see if they should be replaced. I haven't heard anything since, but that was on the news all the time ago. Now, if that would happen, I don't know, what role does the township have in control of that? Sorry, no.
The law as the township best of the service uses setbacks on the subdivision. That right was defended in the Robinson case. She bought a new oil and gas act that Pennsylvania promulgated. Supreme Court in a plurality decision. Basically said, you can't take away municipalities' right to zone. That's what Act 13 did. So that's now sort of ensconced in Constitution as part of the law that interprets our section 7 of the Constitution. So you have a role to play here. It's limited. You have a role.
So,
Do you want to set up a system that prohibits the construction of new pipelines in the community? I mean, some people would say, well, we want the pipelines because when you compare the transmission of these materials by these different modalities, surface, rail, pipelines are almost always safe, but not risk. But what, so you as leaders of the township have decisions that will be you want for the citizens.
I can't imagine, if the pipeline operator has a right, and they have a pipeline in. I can't imagine that they want to replace that pipeline, and we as a township tell them they cannot. Is that what I'm hearing, is that?
I mean, that's what I thought was suggested, that if you put in a new pipeline, so if we restrict new pipelines for setbacks associated with those new pipelines that are straight into that could have an effect. That was the question.
It depends on your definition, you could probably, a pipeline operator could probably repair. But could they put a new one in? If we had a setback requirement for parent or two, I suspect it was a challenge.
Yeah.
Energy transfer partners would have said, oh, wait a minute, this is not something that the township should, right? But that wasn't an issue then, because I don't think any municipality that pipeline went through had that kind of setback requirement for the pipeline.
Well, what I'm thinking is, to your point, what's new, right? You repurpose the pipes. So you send different materials to them, is that considered new? Or
They reverse,
if you,
reverse direction.
if you upsize the pipe, is that new? Or in the basically argue, if you have that easement, you're gonna put a pipe in that easement that's been there for 8 years, you're gonna put a new pipe in there, that new pipe? Or are we saying, if you're gonna have a new easement, new location, is that what we're talking about? We're talking about new
Eastman.
additional pipes coming in. I mean, I think you have a hard time saying you can't replace what's already there as compared to putting in like a third line, and that's not what
That's the issue, that's the issue in energy transfer partners in America too. They put in two new, completely new, and left the old ones there. So could a setback requirement you prevent them? I don't know the answer to that.
Well, okay, the other thing is, what's the goal, right? The goal is not to prevent it, the goal is, if it happens, you wanna have your setbacks to protect the public, so. I don't want us to say
No, we've never said
that we're trying to prevent the
that.
use.
We're excluding.
Right. Right, that's my point.
But we want to regulate. We're in the space that we can regulate.
Correct, so that's why I agree. That would be the purpose, right, is against public safety, we had this concern. And we've learned over the last 3 years what the concerns are, so. That to me would be the purpose and justification for it. Well, after the effective date of this ordinance, it applies for new pipelines. Basically, that's what we're saying.
As we find.
Correct. Right.
So my question revolves around the homes that are currently near pipelines where they will become non-conforming after the fact. Would we be able to look at the pipelines, how far those things are away, and make a decision on whether or not are we seeing things more hard for people, or are we making them more safe?
If we choose 100 feet, which is much less than Chester County's recommend for safety purposes and their concept of potential hazard. are we making it safer? I'm telling you so.
Yeah,
I
but
suppose that with increasing distance, there is safe. I mean, that was one of the rationales that Mr. Pomeranz used when he decided to make a settlement with, on Stokes' estate. He felt that if we remove certain homes, the number of homes that are in this PIR, that you'll agree, that the development would be safer. I'm not sure that that's just one of the reasons that he stated, well, common reasons, but, I'm not sure that is necessarily correct. Because I think you're exposing fewer people. So is that better? Yes, I would answer that question, yes.
Right, but we don't want to expose anybody.
Do we want risk or not? I mean, that's one of the issues that we face as township officials, you know, how much risk do we think a resident is? How do we really answer that, but we do things, zoning. Or other fire and safety type ordinances, so yeah, those are designed to protect the public. Safety well, but how far should we go?
But if you're looking for any input from the short term, for what it's worth, I would recommend exploring the new construction. Aspect. And I don't think it's reasonable to go back with 200 people, whatever it is, and say, hey, we're gonna layer on some.
Now you can't build yourself to redraw unit, now you can't build a school.
Right, I would do that, but I would suggest, recommend that for future, so new pipelines. New developing, whatever that is, for the new development relative to those pipelines, I would recommend investigate that for what it's ordered us to buy.
Yeah, I think there's consensus on, the commission.
But essentially, when we have a two-tier ordinance. Applies to new development, but not existing development.
Yeah.
You like that, you do that legally, it's just.
I don't see why not, mainly because ordinances are prospective, and we can't go backwards. So, I don't see why we couldn't do that. Again, I think it determines, the determination is what's new, or what do you consider a new pipeline moving forward from the FXA?
Well, I mean, you're like, when you develop.
Oh, excuse me, new development, yeah, I was, again, no small. I think that's, you don't have a lot of land necessarily it's going to be developed unless West Town Schools or others change their minds, but.
You could set up a provision where if a repair was going to be, more than 50% of a certain size or cost, you know, as we do with some of our other zoning regulations, that, you know, that could trigger the effectiveness of.
Can I ask a question about Foxhall or Stokes? So they had preliminary approval to expire. Is that ordinance applied?
So, under the agency, our ordinance and the letter. That the only issue notwithstanding, preliminary approval. Is good for 5 years, and that any after enacted ordinances that materially adversely affect it wouldn't apply. So I'm going to suggest keep them. What they have is what they have. For 5 years.
If I could stretch that question a bit more, let's say, and this is purely just speculation, that Keystone said, well, you know, we were really backed up, we've got more development than we can possibly sell, given the economy, et cetera. So we're gonna sell our entire development to, you know, NV Homes or Toll or something like that. What rights go with that sale?
The approvals run with the land,
It does.
yes.
So they get what's in the zoning. Assuming that they comply with Saldo.
Right.
I mean, that wasn't exempted from that zoning. So that you can have these number of homes, and the design is gonna be what you presented and what the Board of Supervisors has agreed to, but we must comply. With our Saldo land development regulations, and that was one of the sticking points, where it raised the number of problems associated with development, where the pump station was going to go, what the construction of the retaining walls was going to be. So it wasn't a completely done deal, and we were supposed to get a final plan, and we would never received.
Yeah, they have not yet filed, I don't know why, I've talked to Greg Egelman. He doesn't know why they haven't yet filed, but that's entirely to them, they can go whatever pace they like, but. Again, their approval is there, it doesn't expire after 5 years. It just, if you enact an ordinance after. Their preliminary approval, their final approval, once that they're covered on their plan for 5 years. So where we have typically seen this is with stormwater regulations, your stormwater regulations are updated somewhat frequently, Act 167 is required us to do so. Developments that have taken more than 5 years after approval, now they're subject to those stormwater requirements. And sometimes that can lead to a material change in your plan, which there's nothing development can do about that. Sometimes your area bulk regulations change, you don't generally do that, but sometimes there's your parking regulations change. So those plans have to be evaluated by your engineer after 5 years of the township. To see, have the ordinance changed in a way that affects your plan, if they do, the developer has to bring that plan forward. Their approval is still good, but they no longer get the benefit of not having to comply with those things.
So what I've at least heard from Mr. Yost is you would like us to consider further provisions that relate to new pipeline.
That's my position.
New developments next to existing pipe.
New pipelines and new developments. Is my opinion.
The only caveat I would add to that is that whatever ordinance you have has to be purely prospective, so it does not undermine the property rights of existing homeowners. Simple as that.
And I think you made that clear, you don't want us to have. To, for instance, create residential setbacks that would make existing parcels that are affected by the setback. You either structure should usable on that parcel. And in that direction.
Are we looking at a safety issue if people don't do?
Probably,
Yeah, we should
just
talk
that
about
they'll be in the potential impact rate.
We should talk about that.
One of the problems that Mr. Foster has articulated several times is those structures already exist. Should you, and the question for you is, should you allow new structures to be built in this potential impact ratings, like a grading house, a grading pond? Should you put that there?
I would like to know more about what the risk is. Because if that's over, I mean, we just had the anniversary of the Johnstown flood and people made bad decisions and town flooding, a lot of people died, so. That, I don't know anything like that happened in Johnstown. And there's going to be a situation where people could possibly get hurt because of a new thing that they're building, they need to be aware of that risk. And I'm not saying, I don't know that we can completely get rid of the risk, but is there some way that we could at least let them know? Like, hey, if you do this, it's risky and it's on you.
One of the things the planning commission proposed in connection with Stokes was a set of requirements that require the developer to provide notice to people that were buying homes. And I think the provision was in the deeds.
Correct. And there was some
Proximity to pipelines, and there were signage requirements that we had imposed on the developer as well. So, we can head in that direction, and we can also explore, what risks, assuming we can find the resources that we need. I'm not sure that it's really easy to find out what the difference, for instance, is between 100 feet and 200 feet.
Yes, how do you measure risk? I mean, some of the regulations in other areas I've seen, they say blast area is a half a mile. Well, that would pretty much take in most of West Township. Some are 300 to 400 feet, and who knows? I do not really would even think how you could possibly measure that.
Well, there are procedures that allow us to evaluate risk. I'm not an expert in that. But Chester County did that with respect to the American Pipeline. So something on that order can be done. But it would likely.
Jerry?
I think it's called, for instance, I think we can call Chester County Planning Commission and say, I think the different risks are associated with the various setback. Distances that we might choose. I'm not sure that they're.
They could provide a rationale for what they recommend, and or Jared could maybe be a resource in that area. But yeah, I mean, I think it's something I think should, my suggestion would be to continue to explore that. I like the notice provision of, if someone's gonna, maybe it's part of the permitting process, if they're gonna erect a structure that's within these setbacks, that if there's a notice that goes to the resident, hey, are you aware that there's a pipeline within proximity? You know, especially if it's on their property, it's like literally running through their property and what they're doing to impact that pipeline.
So, yeah, I can kind of provide an example. We just had an application for a swimming pool. And a swimming pool, the apron of a pool right touching the easement. So as they construct the pool, they will be, heavy machinery will be on a pipeline easement digging out for the pool. And usually when you see a contractors, they're coming out, they want to get the stuff done, they're not. Sometimes they don't have plans on site. So what the setback does, it's a step, provides a little bit of buffer for construction activities, for the use of that easement. So you're less likely to be within the easement because there is a little bit more of a setback. But depending on the property size, if you have half an acre, and you have a 50-foot wide pipeline easement, it takes probably a quarter, a half of your rectangle property. So it's a lot. So it's really, in terms of us going and taking a look exactly which properties are impacted, the only way for us to do this data, the Chester County only provided us data on a small scale because it's protected by Privacy Act and protected by pipeline companies. They're not willing to share this data. All we can do is to go property by property where we suspect there is a pipeline easement, find the recorded plan and recreate this data. Unfortunately, there is no Latin lawns associated with those easements on some recorded plans, so we would be a little bit guessing of where it might be. We could not do an assessment to see how many properties within 50 feet because the data that we got from the county was not to that scale. They really do not provide data of that closer to that. So that prevents a challenge. When we get permits, we look at the recorded plans. If we suspect that they are encroaching within the easement, whether it's stormwater, sanitary sewer pipeline, we do request a property survey. So zoning officer has an authority to request a property survey if whatever is being provided is not very clear. So that's another way maybe going about that is to request a property survey.
I mean, setbacks, we start with setbacks to protect residents. But these setbacks also run in the other direction, which is we don't want the residents to do things that affect the pipeline or the easement or inadvertently cause a catastrophe. So there's an added benefit. But we are worried about, do we make lot properties conforming? Or do we restrict future rights in those areas? Well, but we could exempt those, I think.
Yeah, and I think, for me anyway, labeling each one of these properties within proximity of 100 feet For example, as a non-conforming use requiring them to go through that additional hurdle, I don't think that's necessarily reasonable. But I do think, I mean, they purchased the property, we know the pipeline's on their property. If they want to make an improvement to it, it may be something, you know, like a notice again, notice requirement, or if you're not comfortable issuing the permit because they're too close to the easement construction activity, then we should be able to, you know, either deny the permit or have them resubmit a different plan. It's not that.
Perhaps we can write something like that in the ordinance, so that it has to be, so that the staff can deal with
Mhm.
it. Staff.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you have a sense of whether this should be a saldo or as a?
What's the difference again?
One provides flexibility, the other does not.
Flexibility how?
Zoning, you have to comply. Unless you go to the zoning hearing board and demonstrate the 5 factors to justify the grant of the variance. To Mr. Index earlier comment, technically under the law, that should be a very hard standard. Now, when we're talking about locating a shed in somebody's yard, we tend to be a bit more understanding. Otherwise, you put it in your salad, which means it's a design project. And there are provisions where the applicant can ask for a waiver. And those waivers may act as street. There's like 3 different things they can do. It's a hardship, but not a variance hardship standard. Or that there's an equivalent alternative, so we see that a lot with those permits that should require like a concrete pipe. And instead they want to put PVC in, and they're like, no, this is a much better thing, or this is outdated, and grant those waivers. Or you see a waiver to provide, let's say, a 3-to-1 slope from your stormwater basin when it's supposed to be a 5-to-1 slope, things of that nature. You see things like that. So when that comes to you, you as the board make that decision versus the zoning hearing. It has to be in writing as part of the development process. They have to justify it, but it's usually a little bit easier standard in my opinion than it is on Americans. In either case, the property owner or developer has the right to request the non-strict compliance with provision, because in Pennsylvania, we recognize that every property is distinct. So while we try to regulate everyone the same way, reality is every property is so distinct that sometimes it creates unique situations, so that what happens for this property A maybe should apply to property B for the following. So it's just under zoning, it's really more night and day. It's very involved regulations. Your minimum lot size, your setbacks, your building permit, those types of things. If you look at salvage, they're just more engineering design. So zoning is a 10,000-foot level, salvage is more than 1,000. Stimulating review design. That's the best way I can say it. And one goes to the hearing board, one comes to you. So who do you want to be our positions?
And that applies only to if we wanted to layer on for existing homes within the. So that would be whatever, and then we put up a pool or put a pool in or a shed, right? There would be the existing piece,
Well, keep in mind too, if you put it in salvage, it only applies to an actual subdivision land development.
Right.
So if you have a one-off home that gets torn down and wants to be rebuilt, that's a building permit. That's not salvage, so those provisions won't apply.
Can we put something in permanent process? I think it's really just to me, it kind of to Joey's point, it's almost a notification. Piece at this point, like folks live there, I'm thinking about if they want to put a shed up, or if they want to put, you know, minimal speed or something, you want to add to the building. Like, they already live there, they know the pipeline's there, but from a, you know, risk perspective, like, there's maybe another element of notification to those folks, like, you're creating risk. Maybe that's like sense of review for that, make sure it's not going to encroach on the easement. Is there a way to, permitting process for that, that's in the words?
I'm not able to think of anything off the top of my head. Which doesn't mean there isn't, I'm just. In this moment, I don't know what that would look like, I guess.
Just ask the question, you know.
I mean, if the concern is, again, off the top of my head. Available space, right, you don't want someone living there, that's distinct from somebody putting their lawnmower and shit.
Right.
Right,
And I think you can send in these,
right,
but they can apply to. You could regulate where, if and where the ADU goes, but you don't care so much about who's.
right. That was mine.
Well, do you have any like directional from the board that's one?
We have your input.
Yeah, to me, speaking for myself, it's helpful. It gives us some guidance to bring back to the full commission, to have further discussions. And tweaking of the words.
Maybe it'll lead some of the concern around it. I think, I don't want to speak for the rest of the board, but I think. What I'm hearing is that no one's suggesting we're gonna go out to their existing people and say, hey, you're all non-conforming, like, we don't want that as well. So that, check that box. New construction, let's look at that, new pipeline, let's look at that, see where we go. Fair.
Understood.
I'm sure it's a very complex issue. It will take lots of time, so I'm sure you have other priorities, I know you'll be talking about this flex. Zoning thing, that's gonna be a difficult thing as well, so, I don't know. What are your priorities? I think that's something you have to decide.
Well, you know, at every meeting, Rob and I, with most consultation, we make a decision about what it is we want to do. Some things we have to do because they're time constrained. Other things we have discretion. We'll have to manage our priorities as best we can. I think this is a priority. I think flex is also a priority, so try to cover them as we move forward. Sure. I'm real sad.
Right?
Thank you.
You do. So next,
A concept plan, yes.
we do that next?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Can do that next.
So next on the agenda is the concept plan principals office at 10:30 Burlington Path.
Yeah, thank you, guys. I apologize. That my time's a little messed up. My name is Sean Trout. I'm the owner of Fence Works. And basically, I just want to get some feedback on the proposed plan that we have for the 1030. Property. Essentially, you want to move the operations, the business operations there. Renovate the old deli, for office space. We're gonna simply just clean up the house and rent that to a tenant. So again, just really in the beginning phases. With how doing the site plans, so just kind of looking for, again, just some general feedback of what we're proposing.
Are you, is this office you said, and what is gonna go on in this office? Are you doing sales, people can be in to look at plans, and what's going on?
Basically, just sales, we're getting the phone, we schedule appointments. I have one full-time person in there that kind of monitors phone calls, sets up estimates. Because we'll be more visible, we may have some retail that goes on in there. Right now, currently where we're located, we don't have a ton of retail. That may be something that occasionally customers come. All of our sales are on the road, so really it's just myself, Jennifer who runs my office, and then people will be there constantly, and then there's people that are other employees that be coming and going.
Are you storing any materials in there?
As of now, no. So right now, we're currently located in Spring City. My trucks, my drivers, my material will probably stay in Spring City for now. So what I'm trying to do is just simply get the office space. Approved, the parking approved, move the business there, the retail, my employees. Office employees, and then figure out material down the road. I'm probably gonna do this in phases.
Well, for planning purpose, I think we have to have a pretty good idea of what activity is gonna be going on.
Okay,
So,
sure. And that's generally all I'm looking for tonight, is just basically what you're looking for. Just so I know, again, that's just a sketch plan, real simple to start. Just to see where direction I'm gonna go.
Is he by right?
So, yes, so for professional general offices, yes, and there is another use, the farmhouse, that's a non-conforming use, that's residential.
Staying permanent?
It's, I believe the residential is staying, correct?
Staying, yes. You must have two principal uses, this district.
So, yeah, so when he purchased, the property, they submitted a request for zoning verification. So we issued a zoning verification that states that the residential use can continue for as long as it's not abandoned. And he received use and occupancy permit, I believe, is a conditional one for the farmhouse, because it needs, yeah, it needs some. Yeah, it needs a couple of things, but for commercial part, because he's converting from retail deli into professional and business offices, that would so that would be, it's still by right use within that commercial area. The issue would be he would have to comply with landscaping, screening, parking requirements, add additional parking spots, which would trigger stormwater management regulations.
So this is not the old avenue, this is the other property.
That's a deli.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Must have the other. Okay.
and it's a non-conforming building because
Yeah.
of the front side, back and side. Yep.
And it's probably the right away to it too, I guess. One of the things you do too, Tom, just thinking since the gentleman says, you know, could take the time depending on what you want to do. The permit that you issue, you use an occupancy for, it could just be limited to office, right? So if there's gonna be,
Okay.
if there's gonna be things where you're going to be expanding, like if you're going to be, you know, storing materials, or it's going to be retail or whatever.
Going up.
Yeah, and you could always revisit the permit that you had at that time, to make sure that it's complying with whatever you.
Yeah, I appreciate saying it, because that's basically the route I want to go. I need to be able to move in there as quickly as possible. I think the fastest route would be just getting the building renovated, do the, you know, the parking that's needed for that, you know, for the building, and then down the road, come back if
I think you can sort of work with him on what the use is at the time that he's moving in, so that you can put conditions on the UNO at that time, so that if the use starts to expand and put other things, then.
Then you have to
that
do a
trigger just
land
review
development.
the use of the occupancy permit for you.
Okay.
Since it's by right, I think that would be the. Kind of the only trigger, unless you're gonna do something that's not allowed, it doesn't sound.
Yeah, the main issue I would say is that there is no parking for that use. So he has to add additional parking and ADA parking
Yeah, bring it up to today.
to today, yes.
That's not even done there ever.
Does that create some stormwater issues?
It does, I think, the comment from Hal would be that once we figure out what is needed, you know, then we'll add the stormwater to the plan. It's not on there yet, again, it's just a real simple sketch plan. So they'll design that, you know, what we need, and I think it's over, what was, I think it's over 2,000.
It was like almost 3,000.
Yeah.
Oh, depending on how many, if you are adding parking spaces to accommodate existing size building, I think it was 1,000 square feet less or something like that. Because you were thinking between 6 parking spaces to
Yeah,
11.
plan is 11.
11, okay.
Because the other idea is maybe we do a second story, because the building now is only 900 square feet, it's small. So as we would grow, we should, well, maybe also go a second story on now, so we have enough parking to accommodate that. You know, go up instead of out, because we really can't go out. So that's another, again, we're just very early on, but that's just some of the thoughts.
Yeah, the parcel extends further out, as you know, and the parcel is pretty vacant at the back. It's all the uses at front.
All right, thank you, guys, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
So next up, we have the Broken Grove Stream Restoration Project. Okay.
Good evening, I'm here, I'm basically, one of the staff engineers from Cedarville and, Miller asked us to come this evening and discuss the cost estimate and the funding options for the Pleasant Grove stream restoration. I believe in your packet you have, two proposed options. One is completing the restoration in one single phase, and the other is breaking it up into two phases, roughly 50% of the stream length for each phase. As you can see on there, for phase one, which would be the whole program in its entirety, you're just shy of $850,000 in totality. Assuming that Westtown is successful in the Growing Greener grant, that would require a match of just under $350,000 plus or minus. If you break it up into two different phases, the cost overall goes up, and then you would be subject to applying for grants in two consecutive grant rounds. It's really unlikely that you would be awarded a full amount for two grant rounds, which means that your potential exposure could be a lot higher. The pros of doing it in one section is that you achieve your PRP all at once. And then you're done and you can move on to bigger and better things, albeit you're gonna have to put out a significant amount of money in one calendar year.
Yeah, so we are working on, as you remember, the township budgeted, $160,000 for this year to do design and engineering and permitting and grant writing. This is the last project remaining for us to satisfy PRP with our, with DEP on the MS4 program grant permit. So now that the full design and engineering is done and working on a grant application, the decision that needs to be made is how much are we applying for, because they are seeking an official commitment letter. So we need to know exactly what the grant amount would be. In the beginning, we talked about two phases, last year and the year before that, and the reason why, I think the estimated cost of original project that was proposed, the scope was more well detailed. I think it was more true stream restoration project versus what is being proposed now. We're still gaining the same amount of credits. I think the original estimated cost was $2 million. So we brought the scope back a little bit. Seems like DEP still giving us the same amount of credits. So that's where we are now, whether it should be separated into two phases, and then that would take a longer timeline to complete a PRP. We don't know whether or not we can get two consecutive grants, whether the money would be available, grant funding money, or if the township decides to move forward with just one phase, we would have to figure out $350,000 match.
Well, since the MS4 thing seems to be just forgetting about stream restoration going forward, how long would we have to complete the PRP? If we just did it little by little by little, I mean.
I don't think anybody knows.
Yes, that's unclear. I mean, regulations can change year to year, as Pat was saying with other regulations. They're probably not going to be less restrictive, given the climate and given the concerns that we have for overall stormwater. The other concern is that right now there's balance, or generally a balance between sediment loading and volume control, and the regulations could shift, and you focus more on volume control, you could be back at zero. And have a totally different set of regulations to adhere to, whereas if you finish your PRP, you know, if you check the box and you've achieved your plan. I'm not advocating for one or another, but we've had this discussion with several of our other townships.
It's a hard decision to make because you don't know what's gonna come in the future, because there is still no guidance from DEP on the volume control plans.
We delay this, I mean, cost typically go above over time, these types of things, is that your experience?
Correct. And the costs that I provided there are all inclusive, so it includes your inspection, all your maintenance bonds, everything, so that's the total program, there's not gonna be anything added to that.
Question for Amanda, so what happens if we decide to go for it and we don't get the grant?
So usually what happens, let's say, you would sign a commitment letter that would be submitted with the grant funds and, with the grant fund application in the fall, let's say we are not awarded the grant. So then we have to decide whether we would apply for grant again, or then we would have to add this project to a capital program and figure out how to save money and put money away to be able to do that. Or we would have to go after bond to get a bond to get the program complete and borrow money. We don't have a designated account for, or designated fund for stormwater projects.
Who was going to apply for the grant, is that with,
Township.
The township, yeah.
it's like, a lot depends on how much grant money we get, I mean, it's as simple as that.
Yeah, so, and again, also like we can apply for a maximum grant amount and provide a commitment letter that says we will provide, we are probably more likely to get the grant if we are providing such a extensive amount of a match. The required amount is only 10%. So we can do option 2, where you would phase to fit the budget of, you just provide $52,000 match, you can do a half of it, if we get the grant fund. If we don't get the grant fund, or if we get the grant fund, you complete phase 1, then the township can choose either to apply for another grant or borrow money to complete a phase 2. So you can do it that way, or go for entire amount, 847. And let's say they'll get an award letter that only $350,000 are funded. I'm sure that we can lower our project amount if we just want to phase it out. So there's going to be more communication after there is an award. But if we are saying we commit in a specific amount of money or percentages, I'm sure Growing Greener would like to see that specific amount, specific percentage.
Correct, and we actually did work with another township where, they reduced the grant award amount, but expected the township to have the
Still
same
complete
level
it.
of match. So. that
So, like-
Stretches it out longer.
So like here, I don't know what the percentage would be. So like if we say we are committing almost, what is it, 45%, or so. So then if we get less amount, then we still have to commit the same amount, the same percentage amount that we are saying we would. For the application is due, June 22nd. The next Board of Supervisors meeting is June 15th. I was going to draft a commitment letter for the Board of Supervisors to consider at that meeting. So I will just need to know which option you are more lenient towards.
Well, it certainly would be helpful to have a little more intelligence on where our MS4 regulations and force us into things, because that's really what it is, it's forcing us into this.
Yeah, and I don't know if we can have anybody additional, any insight from DEP, but it sounds like all municipalities are in the same boat.
Well, I mean, it looks like we're putting money. Extending it out, we're going to touch simply, they extending this out, so. Play your thing.
Most of them are extending it out just because it's a significant, contribution from the townships, and yeah, like Neil said, your options are borrowing or bonding and. You know, it's just a lot of money for people to spend on something that's not very sexy, fancy.
I'll do that.
That's everything, that's right, we have to do it all.
Yeah.
You got around pipeline.
Yes, if you have an individual feedback and if you would like to email it to me before the meeting, and if you have any additional questions that I can find somebody to answer those in terms of DEP guidance, we can do that as well.
Great. Thank you very much. And we will reconvene for our regular meeting.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, public comment, sorry. Time for public comment on workshop updates. All right, we can do, you can begin in September.